auction companies usually run auctions every 7 weeks. However, last week we saw many auction companies host auctions online. But without a doubt, this lot in Brixton was one of the most highly talked about auction lots, which was even covered in a national newspaper. The guide price of this property started at £400,000, a property that was much talked about. It ended up selling for over £717,000. This was a property that was not to be missed, and we was highly discussed at the pre-auction events with Sam Fongo of Midas Property Group and Andrew Binstock, expert auctioneer of Auction House London.
The secret I'm happy to tell is that it's been extraordinarily popular. I mean, the fact that a national newspaper picked up the story tells you it's pretty good. So we realised kind of early on that our guide price was obviously hugely attractive. So I think in my experience, you can assume that 400 is a non-starter. It's going to go for an awful lot more than that. I don't know. Listen, I think we've got, it's the most popular lot in the catalogue. So there's going to be lots and lots of people bidding on it. The girls are still beavering away, processing bidding forms. I imagine we'll have 30, 40, maybe more people bidding on it. You know, Sam, I don't know.
Andrew, one of the questions is, auction prices are ridiculously high at the moment, and some are saying a mini bubble is just at the calm before the storm in October when the furlough scheme ends. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, first of all, the market is strong in terms of inquiry levels. I agree with you. We haven't had an auction yet. We're about to have one, as you know, in an hour, where we'll probably be able to gauge. I mean, I can answer this better probably at 4 o'clock today than now, because as I said earlier, yes, it feels like inquiry levels are massive. Yes, it is good that there is this general feel-good factor. I agree with you. Stamp duty, furlough schemes, everyone sort of seems to be, sort of like I said earlier, a bit over the whole corona, talking about it every minute. Sorry, my mobile keeps ringing. Ultimately, there will be inevitably some kind of, you know, once winter comes along and once furlough ends, and eventually next March when they stop the stamp duty, they revert back to the normal stamp duty levels, then it's inevitable. But the property market does this anyway, with or without coronavirus. So I can't tell you if prices are going to be high yet, because I haven't done an auction since all these since the stamp duty things happened. But we saw even through lockdown, thank God for us auctioneers, we were all able to carry on. Everyone was expecting an enormous whack in the property market. It didn't really come. I mean, we sold well in June, and we sold well the month before that. Volume levels are down, don't get me wrong. Volume levels are down, but there is still a good appetite amongst buyers for well-priced stock. I mean, we've talked about the Cold Harbour Lane one. And I think it's hard to predict what's going to happen in October, because I don't think anybody knows any more than they knew what was going to happen in March, April, and May. People keep telling me there's going to be an inevitable recession and this, that, and the other. I don't know. I'm not a top economist. I'm just an auctioneer. But so far, we've not seen any indications of that, and quite the opposite. Things seem to be strong, bubbling away nicely, and everyone seems to be very active.
All right, thank you. So
just to add to that discussion, I think when it comes to auctions, and I always say to clients when I try and value their properties for an auction, that there are two types of properties. It's the vanilla, the ones are called vanilla, where it's a flat in a block. Everyone knows the value based on the yield, because that's it. But then there's what I call an elastic value property. And that for me is where auctions become interesting, when the property has an elastic value, where it's a rundown property like Cold Harbour. It's worth a different number to a different person. If I want to buy Cold Harbour to live in it, it's worth something different to me. If I want to convert it to flats, it's worth a different number. If I live next door and I want to expand my house into it, which are quite a few people in London now do, like in W9, people buy next door to expand their homes, it's different. So when it comes to auction valuation, and I say to people during my workshops that don't bid. It's not like on a motorway, you can be driving behind someone that was doing 110, the police will stop you. And you can't say, well, I was doing 100, the guy in front was doing 110. It's that way. So don't do 100 because there's someone doing 110 and you think the police will say, okay, wow, you're only doing 100. You have to have your own value for a property when you go in. think, Andrew, yeah, I think I remember the case you mentioned about the client that bought that property. It's taken me a while to actually remember. That lady, I think we met at one of the very popular Brent lots, which we had about 100 people come in. She was disappointed of not buying Brent, so she bought the next thing on the lot that I recommended to her. That was the beauty of being in a room where someone can turn up and then buy. Now, what is the process to actually bid? Now, I believe you cannot have those kind of people that turn up and buy. What's the process?
You're right. I mean,
now what happens?
Yeah, so you can't have that sort of whimsical bidding experience unless you want to register for multiple lots. So we are allowing people to register for more than one property, but you're right, Sam, the bidder does need to decide prior to sort of sitting down virtually what lots they're interested in. So until we're back in the room, you're absolutely right. We're not going to see anyone, no auctioneer is going to see that fully fluid, decide on that spur of the moment and put your hand in the air experience. However, we do, like I said, if you are going through our catalogue and you really want lot 5, but you're also half interested in lot 50 and 55, say, then all you've got to do is register for all 3 and you just write on your bidding form, if I win lot 5, I'm not going to bother with lot 50 and 55. And then it just keeps it open and you'll get the chance to then log back in for lot 50 and 55. And if you don't bid, you don't bid. There's no harm done, no effort for you. So I would just encourage anyone that's watching that wants to sort of wants to bid on multiple lots. I mean, crikey, if you ask us nicely, we'll let you bid on the whole catalogue under certain circumstances. So, don't be put off by the registered bidding experience only. There is still opportunities to whimsically bid, but you do need to sort of know in advance that you might whimsically bid, if that makes any sense.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Just a question that we got in the on social media, which links to Kwasi's question about valuations as well.
Yeah.
With the corona, now I know we can do open house, you can do valuation, you can do viewings, subject to the tenants allowing you to, and most properties are tenanted. What is the trend, people having to not view and then bid, and when they do bid, what if they cannot gain access for a valuer to actually value so they can get the finance to complete? Are you experiencing that at all from your last auctions?
No, you're absolutely right. It happens, of course. Ultimately, any vacant property, is fine. And you said most of the properties are tenanted. I'd say it's 50-50. So half the catalogue, this won't affect at all. The other half of the catalogue, you've got vendors who, before the auction, will say to us, look, we don't want people going in. We don't want to bother the tenants. It's not very nice for them. That's the problem with block viewings, of course. You might have 40 to 50 people. I know we're socially distancing right now, so it might be one at a time, but a lot of people traipsing through a small flat. I can understand why not every tenant is okay with that. But when a winning bidder has bought a property, it's much easier to get a tenant or the seller to play ball, because now you know who the person is that's turning up. It's only one person. They're a professional person, i.e. a mortgage surveyor or whatever. And the risk of, they might nickel my stuff or, bring mud into my house or whatever it is that people have an issue with is very unlikely. So I would say it's quite unusual for access to be refused between exchange and completion, even if the building is tenanted, when a survey is required. But remember this, Sam, people who are bidding on cheap tenanted properties, which are the ones that typically have no access, the buyer doesn't require any access anyway afterwards, because it's cash. If you're buying in cash, you don't really need a survey done. You're buying a house up in wherever it is. You put your solicitor in funds, a bit of paperwork goes back and forth, and then you own it. So, and then typically you'll go and knock on the door and meet your own tenant, and they'll let you in. But so I've got to tell you, very rare. I can't remember the last failed completion we had because a buyer was refused access. I can't even remember one.